Welcome back to my channel. This is Tracy with Artful Creations by Tracy for the design team for tailor-made cards for you. Today's project is a mini paper bag album using this month's digital kit called Special Delivery Christmas. I have printed out the entire kit with a few extra pieces and will also be using 4 white paper bags as well as 2 additional cream colored cardstock by Cricut. First, I will fold each of the paper bags in half and use my bone folder to crease them. This will help keep their shape. They end up being a 5-inch square. Next, I will arrange them, alternating the bottom flap, as you will see me here, alternating these. And then once they are put together, I will then sew a zigzag pattern down the middle. Now, I also use the binding clips to hold the bags in place so they do not slip. And although you don't necessarily need to sew the bags together, especially if you don't have a sewing machine, I find that it really makes it a lot easier to work with and gives more sturdiness to it. To start, I will always do the front and back cover first so that I can punch my 4 holes that the ribbon will be added for binding in a more decorative look. Like I said, this paper bag measures 5 inches and I need to mark off 4 equal spaces to punch my holes. And this one was easy. You all know how I don't like to measure, but all I had to do is go in 1 inch and then in 1 inch in between. My kind of measurements. I'm going to bring in my giant crocodile. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend it for making paper bag albums, as it has a nice deep well to slide that paper bag down, as you will see. Now, I typically will go in about a 1/2 inch from the binding to punch my holes. You don't want to go in too far, as that will give you less area inside your album for your photos, mementos, and journaling. Now, I'm going to show you the ribbon that I've decided to use, but we will get back to that later. Now, I discovered that I should have put my front and back cover on first, and I normally do that. Not really sure where my head was when I started this album. All it really means is just a little extra work for me, because now once I glue them on, I just need to repunch those holes. And this particular paper bag album is very glossy, so I'm going to use that 3-in-1 beacon glue, and it is perfect for this because it gives me a lot of extra time to slide my papers right into place. And the outside bags will be a true measurement to the size of your album, but the insides will lose about 1/8 to 1/4 inch, depending on how you how those holes are put in. So keep that in mind. And when you're cutting your paper, like sometimes I use my Cricut to cut all my stuff out first. Just keep that in mind when you are making your album. So now here I'm going to start my album like I do when I do my cards. I will figure out all the pieces of paper that I'm going to use, go through the entire album on what I want for my main background pieces before I glue them down. Now I'm going to show you how I create the first 2 pages, and then we'll do the last 2 together. So just like any vintage kit that I do, I'm going to use my Tim Holtz Vintage Photo Distress ink the edges to make them look really well worn. I'll also use that Tim Holtz Distress tool to rough up the paper edges along with some paper tearing, with some of those pieces as well. And I'm curious, how many of you out there actually like this more vintage look? My husband isn't exactly a fan, but I absolutely love it. In fact, the only really vintage thing that we even own is a wine press from his family, and I believe that dates back to either the 40s or the 50s. Not that we've ever used it, but it's a pretty nice piece. All right, I am going to then glue down these pieces. And what I'm going to do is, if you notice that the bottom part of that bag, I'm going to turn that into a pocket. And I think that's a really nice little added feature that you can do. It's or I should say element to add to that. You don't have to do that, but you can, in fact, cover it up completely if you want. I have been known to do that myself, but I really think adding that little pocket is like a little secret compartment, and I think those are always a really fun. And because this glue is wet, I want you to be careful, if in fact you use this glue, when you are making a paper bag album, because that glue can seep out of those holes and you don't want to accidentally glue those pages together. So once you glue down those pages, the next step before you move on, you will need to then punch out your holes again. This is the process that you need to do for each one of the pages. I always do them in pairs, and it makes it so much easier to do it this way. You're getting the full benefit of your album this way, and cutting out those holes. I mean, if you don't cut out those holes, then they're going to be covered eventually, and you won't see where they need to be cut. So it's really important to make sure that you go ahead and cut those holes after gluing the pages down. Paper bag albums have been around for many years, and I actually have made quite a few. I did record a video doing a paper bag album back in September. It was one of my very first videos. However, most of my work was off camera, so unfortunately I had to scrap that idea. Oh well, here we are doing this one. Now, we are finishing the album with adding these last two pages, and I am showing you that I just need to finish punching out those holes so that we can go ahead and add our decorative ribbon. I went ahead and cut out my ribbon ahead of time. I cut them into 8-inch lengths, 4 different ribbons, 2 of each. And it's important to do that because I think it adds a lot more decorative look to your album, and it's not just for decorative purposes, but also it helps with the binding, especially if you aren't going to sew your album. This is what in the past would hold these albums together, is just simply the ribbon. Now I do partner them up, like I said, and I try to alternate so that they don't look completely the same when you're putting the ribbon in. That's important. Again, it's just adding another element of decorativeness to your album. When I put these ribbons into those little holes, I just tightly twist the very tips and try to feed them through. What I find helps is using a pair of tweezers to just guide them in or pull them out. Either way will work. Sometimes those holes don't match up exactly, but the tweezers will definitely be an aid and help in placing that ribbon in. When you do, make sure they're even, and then you're going to, you can either put all the ribbon in all at one time and then do your tying. I think I just stopped at 2 to show you how to tie. And what I do for knots is make a square knot. Now, we are a scouting family, so square knots are pretty easy around here. If you do not know how to make a square knot, it actually is quite easy. You're just going to make your first little knot, and then you're going to reverse the ribbon, and there you have a square knot. When I am tightening up these ribbons, I'm making sure that they're not super tight, because you want to make sure that your album will open up freely. And then I'm kind of alternating the ribbons a bit so that they all have a showing. And then I want to also make sure that they will eventually end up on the binding. Here I am showing you opening the book here. However, it's really kind of pointless to do it at this point. Really put in all your ribbon first before you do that, because if you are too tight, then you can just take your ribbon off and redo it. And I can tell you, I've done that many, many times. It's not difficult to have to redo them. It's just kind of a pain. So give that a whirl. Then the next part is that you want to singe the edges of your ribbons. This is really important so that they do not fray. That is, just take any old lighter and very gently go ahead and singe the ribbon edges. And I had done all of them already, except for the one just to show you. And then, of course, take your book and start opening it up and bending the binding to get those to move freely. And once you do that, it's time to decorate the inside. I will do that off camera and come back with a fully decorated book. All right, now let's go through this adorable album. I will show you those little pockets as you see right there. I also added one of my altered paper clips to it. And you see that I just pulled out some extra pieces of paper that are actually in the part of the bag that's the opening. So it's important to make sure those are exposed because you want added elements like this to pull out to add more area for your mementos. And so you could do almost anything with these little albums. I think it just turned out so cute. You can add extra pocket like that one. I also added on the, I think the last 2 pages, little, what are those called? Like a corner. So you could slip in things there or make it like a photo mat. But here it is. Here is my album all complete, and I would love it if you would like this video to hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, to subscribe and hit that bell for future video upload notifications. And always have a blessed day.